12 WIF-DIF World Ultimate and Guts Championships. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here in Osaka, Japan. On the menu, we have a Pool D battle in the Open Division featuring second seeded and overall number 5 Australia versus third seeded and overall number 12 France. I'm Lou Burris. With me is Chase Sparling-Beckley. Chase, tell us about this French team.
Well, this is a French team that's really on the rise. They were not here as an open team in 2008 at the World Ultimate and Guts Championships in Vancouver. They did bring a mixed team, and the open team is really we're going to see a team with a fairly young makeup. And they're really sort of tempering their expectations to the sort of the process of building a program. So they're interested in a top 10 finish. They're certainly interested in beating some of their European regional rivals, as well as at this tournament, hopefully picking off some of the upper seeds, in particular Australia. Is going to put them in a great position in their pool. As we're watching this game today, I think we're going to see a lot of quick handler movement from the French. Yep. And potentially some give-go offense. They're really going to try and get rid of it quick, change a lot of angles. And a part of that is, that fits the makeup of their team. They're not very tall. They do have a lot of sort of quick athletes, but they're really, if they do take shots, they're going to be taking them to quick players running away.
To speak to their propensity to run a short game, when we were watching them warm up, they were actually warming up throwing 3-foot push passes.
Yes, they were. And I think, practice how you play. They're really, I think, we're going to see that. We're going to see some push passes today.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing in the offense. And I think, especially against the much taller Australian team who is used to going up and getting the disc, I wouldn't say that we won't see any away shots from the French, but they're going to really pick them and use that quick handler movement to hopefully open up some speedy receivers going away from the disc.
So let's look at the Australians. They are missing some big names from the history of Australian Ultimate. Tom Regacki has moved on. He's playing Masters Division this year. And Mike Neal, one of the greatest receivers in Australian history, is retired. But it seems like it's really opened up space for sort of a broader team strategy. You're not going to see one or two guys dominating the leaderboard for this team for either assists or goals. But there are some familiar names out of Australian history that we will see today. Number 1, Owen Shepherd. He's their defensive captain, and he's been around a long time. He played in 2004, 2008.
As well as John O'Holmes.
John O'Holmes, number 14. He's just going to kind of do everything for them. He's one of those guys who he's been around long enough and he's played enough that he's not necessarily going to do anything spectacular, but when something needs doing, somebody needs to get open.
He goes and gets it done.
A crucial throw needs to be made. He's going to be the guy that's going to get those things done.
Definitely, and I think just what you're saying. This Australian team, they're always tall, and once again, they're tall. They have some big-time receivers and big-time defenders, but a lot of those guys are young. They haven't grown up into that big-time role that a Regacki or Mike Neal used to, and that used to hold, and that's a part of why they really spread that goal-scoring ability out. And so those veterans are really going to be crucial to their success. Being able to figure out the offense when it's not working quite right, hold on to it for an extra couple of counts, and throw the correct swing. That kind of thing is really crucial to their success.
And we did get to see these guys play in Portland
on their North American pre-tour. We did.
And we watched them play the Portland Rhino team, and at that time, they really just struck me as still really figuring it out on offense. I mean, they're a true national team. A lot of guys from Sydney and Melbourne, but also a guy from Perth, Canberra, Adelaide, and so they're still figuring things out offensively. But defensively, I was really impressed with how they played.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we even talked with them about is in that Rhino scrimmage, they struggled a little bit at first to really contain a couple of key players from Rhino. In particular, Rhino's captain Mario O'Brien was all over the place in the first half of that game, throwing give-goes, getting kind of everything he wanted from an attacking position as a handler. And Australia really, in the second half, tweaked that matchup a little bit. They have a couple of really quick
defenders.
defenders with great footwork.
Yep. Max Wheeler, great
Max
defender.
Wheeler, great defender. Keith Hodgson, who's a Scottish import, actually,
Yeah.
but another guy who can guard that quick handler cut. And once they kind of tweak those matchups, their defense and the game improved drastically for them. So I would expect, if we see France starting to isolate a couple of players here and there, that some key matchup tweaks by the Australians might start to contain that.
Okay. We've got the French in blue and red pulling to the classically attired yellow and green Australians.
Here's Ken Shepard with the disc, another brother of Owen Shepard, another player who's been around in Australia Ultimate for a lot of years.
So a big huck right away. And Angus Keenan, number 29, is able to pull that in. Really, Australians getting exactly what they want. Little bit of early movement, freeze open one of their receivers, Keenan, wide open for the deep shot. No trouble there.
Yeah, I mean, and there was even another Australian receiver right there, ready to pick up the trash should that not work. That was actually, I think, a lot of people, when they sort of think about the tall Australian receiver or throwing to any tall receiver, they might think, air it out. But that was actually a really pinpoint huck going to a receiver running away. It was nice and easy. Made it easy for his receiver to actually not only get the disc on the huck, but milk it right into the end zone.
It's nice to see the Australians starting off with a quality huck. When we watched them play in Portland, they thought they really struggled with their deep balls in that game.
Yes. And that was another one of those ones where like the angles were right. The throw was all the way on the sideline. The receiver gave the thrower a little bit of room to size up where it was, and he didn't have to throw a lofty huck over the top of a defender. He threw it right down the line. I think today as well, as opposed to yesterday, the wind has dined out quite a bit, especially going in that direction. So hopefully the hucks will be a little bit more accurate.
Okay. French operating out of a very traditional horizontal stack, set about 15 yards off. Loliev throws a dump to Captain Plas. We see a huck right away, a chance for a D, a beautiful bid by Max Wheeler. Loliev able to come down with it though.
Foul called. And Loliev comes up shaking his hand like he got
I think
kicked.
got kicked. A little kick block attempt there by Max Wheeler.
Great bid by Wheeler.
Great bid by Wheeler. Up the line to Captain Plas. He's going to throw a offside outside in to a diving Hurel. 1-1 France. Boy, I really like that throw by Plas.
Yeah, really, not only did he find the receiver, but he really found the lane that he had to throw in.
And the space was all that weak side space to throw into.
Yeah.
But very unconventional throw.
Unconventional, but and a great grab by the receiver, but I think a good choice.
Yep. And we did see the French go deep on that point, and
I was a little surprised to see how spread out their handlers and their cutters were.
Yeah.
In their offense, I would have expected a little bit, a little bit more sort of quick handler movement up front than we saw. And they may be just sort of, again, figuring it out. This, I think, is the first game that the French have played at this tournament.
Yep.
And especially sort of having not been here before, playing against international competition, non-European competition, I think we may be just seeing a little bit of getting their legs underneath them.
So a second defensive point for the French. They came down forcing forehand on the first point. It'll be interesting to see. They did talk about mixing it up when we spoke to them earlier. Levis to catch the pull.
I think the big thing here for the French on D, and here they are coming down in a junk, is really just, they need to make the Australians throw a lot.
Interesting thing about this junk is they're not marking. They're
That
playing
is.
a no mark. Wall of three. Looks like they're trying to play man in the backfield.
Again, one of those, this would be a defense designed to just make Australia throw a lot of throws.
Yep. Levis breaks through and then gets out and runs the field. Chews about 30 yards that way. Barr. Levis.
And the French have transitioned to all man.
Pick called.
And really here, if they're going to make something happen, the French really have to be tight on this dump. I would almost overplay this swing and dare that defender to go up line.
Okay.
And he does.
Levis goes up line, but it's dumped around to Blakely. Nice backhand around. And that is bar to Blakely for the goal.
Heads-up play by Blakely to, catch that one around, but also to be able to toe it in. That was a position where certainly a receiver who wasn't paying attention could have sailed out of bounds on that throw. It was a great break, but, a little bit high and Blady. He had to go up high for it and came down and towed it in bounds.
So that French, the junk that the French played is really interesting that they chose not to mark. And you could kind of see how they're set up, and it works great early, but as soon as Levis gets through the middle of that, it's done. And I think a key on that, you're going to play that kind of a no marking wall. You can't let him throw it. You can't let him throw it.
Got to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got to adjust back. Once you let that, even on a throw and go, once that guy, if he throws even just a swing and busts through your wall for an easy throw and go, once he's behind that wall, it's over.
Yeah.
It's just over. French doing well to sort of contain enough in order to transition out of it, but you'd like to see him give up a fewer yards.
Fewer yards in transition, Little miscue on who's going to catch the pull, and the French will have an opportunity to walk this up to the front of the goal line.
They got away with one there.
They did. Side stack from the French. Little isolating the front. Chris Hill getting beat by Espiate. A low line drive huck from L'Olivier is going to just be too far out in front of the receiver.
Wow. Had a good open receiver streaking from a good position, but just couldn't connect. I know the Australians are on the run. Travel called, I think.
It's headed back to Taylor. Captain Shepard's going to collect it anyway, so open. He's going to right away put a big one up to Cunliffe. This should be a goal. And a 3-1 Australia lead.
Interesting choice there by the defensive captain Shepard. I think, he's just seeing he's got a big height mismatch deep. He knows he's got that throw and steps. And, that was a position, though, where that receiver, when he lets go of it, is a long way down the field.
Right.
And he had to really gun it to get it that far.
And part of what you see is that he's really not marked.
That's true.
That marker's not getting any defensive pressure on Shepard.
Right.
And so not only is he seeing the fact that he's got Cunliffe going out with a couple steps and size, but he also
can throw whichever throw he wants.
Whatever he wants to throw, whatever he's most comfortable with, and there he's able to get off that big backhand.
Right. I think, especially on their D squad, I wouldn't be surprised to see a fair amount of throwing to mismatches by the Australians today.
Yeah.
I think they feel strong about their away game.
Yeah.
Especially against the French, and in transition we might see a 1-2 huck.
Yeah. Hurel. Socrates. Hurel.
Nice break, Mark.
Plus. Puts up a big huck to the weak side. Lots of folks there. Zubir looks for a little misdirection and finds Fratier for the goal. Nice huck from Plus.
Yeah, it really was. I was actually Andrew Jackson for the Australians did a great job to catch up some ground and make a bit of a play.
Seems like he got a bit turned around.
It looked like he got a bit turned around, but that was one of those sort of soft side hucks. He's almost he's throwing to the receiver who's actually not even necessarily yet turned the page.
Yep.
Andrew Jackson almost got there for the D, and is a much taller defender than the man he was marking, the French man he was marking, and I think that ended up being a sort of just a situation where actually this is a perfect huck to the soft part of the defense.
Right. And
You know,
again on that huck, we're seeing not a great mark.
not a great mark.
Really, that's not a mark at all.
Yeah. And you know, an interesting situation where the break mark throw goes up to Ploss.
Yep.
On the break side, he turns the corner and throws around the open side, and Andrew Jackson is just trailing his guy basically straight back enough that sort of weak side huck can drop right in there.
This is Ken Shepard, the little brother Owen. Gardner.
And here we see that,
Hammer to Shepard.
really loose French wall. It's all, you know, I mean, it's a no mark sort of junk in the back defense.
They've transitioned into man. Holmes.
Somebody's uncovered.
It's Tatum on the far side.
There they
nice switch by the French, but Shepard's able to beat him, and he's got, for the forehand inside out, he's going to find Levis.
Travel called.
So Shepard with the disc about 7 yards out of the end zone. The French really are able to recover. You're going to have to reset. Gardner goes up line, and he's going to hop on in.
Goal Australia.
4-2. Seemed like there's a little bit of a miscue there on the French D that as possession came in, I thought they were forcing forehand, and then as right here, their switch comes around, but the defender does not account, and we're just going to get the easy little flip. No trouble for Gardner.
No trouble at all. And, you know, Gardner also made a great move.
Yeah.
French defender overplayed the dump. Gardner takes a quick, hard jab step, wide open up the line. I think I agree with you. Had the force not been switched, that's a little bit of a harder throw because it's the inside out, either
inside out,
flick or
left.
lefty.
We saw the Japanese throwing some yesterday.
And, you know, I mean, that's a much more technically difficult throw. But still, great job by Gardner.
Yeah.
Gave himself a lot of room to get a nice, easy throw, able to jump it right into the end zone.
So we're at 4-2, Australia over France. The Australians have one break. Otherwise, this game has gone to serve. Not a lot of turnovers. A little bit of a cleaner game, really, than I expected.
Yeah. I think, you know, I would hope to see a little bit more, especially on the marks from both teams.
Yes.
A little bit more of a grinding defense than we've seen so far. Again, that may just be first game of the tournament.
Yeah.
Getting their legs underneath them, shaking off the jet lag a little bit, probably especially for the French.
Some nice quick motion from the French. Ferratier. Lorino. Finds Espitia.
Open side, open side, open side, open side.
Oh, yeah. I would not be surprised to see the Australians take a timeout here. I mean, I think we've seen one turnover so far.
Yeah.
Just the one French overthrow. You know, otherwise we're looking at 7 out of 8 on possessions.
And, you know, the French just turned their men around. Turned them around and turned them around, and the Australians turnstiled.
Yeah, and, you know, I wonder part of this, when we were talking with the Australians yesterday, they were a bit cocky about this game.
They were.
And I think that's it's a difficult spot as a defender to go into a game thinking that a team's just going to give it to you.
Yeah, and I would agree with that for two reasons. One, you know, it's hard to get yourself up.
Yeah.
When you're not expecting the person you're guarding to really get up, you know, and do the little things right, like working really hard on the mark or not getting turnstile.
Work at like the great job we saw with their footwork defending in the stack. When we watched them play against Portland, they never got turnstile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other reason is there's an element of, you know, great defensive teams that have to do with cooperating and really selling out for your teammates.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, if your teammates aren't up, it's really hard to get yourself up.
Levis finds Blakely. Another easy offensive point.
Yeah. Again, I think for both teams, focus on that mark could really improve their defensive lot here.
Okay. And the Australians do take a timeout. I think it's a great decision. They need to figure out a way. They want this to be a much more of a defensive game, and they're going to try to find a way here to fire the troops up, get things going, maybe make a strategic adjustment.
And build upon that lead that they've got.
Yeah. But they're going to take a break, and so will we. We'll be back in about 45 seconds. Back at the 2012 Whiff Diff World Ultimate and Guts Championships, we're watching Australia up 5-3 over France. And Chase, the wind is really just completely given out.
A vastly different landscape than yesterday, where we had a pretty strict upwind, downwind game.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen it today already in some of the throw choices, as well as the execution on some of these hucks. They've been low, they've been fast, they've been really pinpoint in a way that we just didn't see yesterday.
Right.
We saw some excellent throws yesterday, especially from the Japanese men and women.
Yep.
But I think a few of specifically the foreign teams, struggled a little bit throwing exactly what they wanted to throw in that wind. And I think, it led to two things. One, some of those throws turned over, became very deable. And two, after a while, we saw those teams start to sort of double pump, not throw that throw on the first instinct. Sometimes they turn and try and throw it the other way, and that oftentimes led to some disastrous results.
Yeah.
But here today, we're really seeing these throwers pretty much able to do whatever they want.
Yeah, and we're looking at both teams a combined 8 for 9 on possessions. French in a vertical stack, isolating the front, and a bit of confusion here. And a nice bid
Great D by Max Wheeler.
I'm not sure he got a piece of it, but he definitely forced the drop.
And here we're, just like we're talking about, out of the timeout, Australia putting a much tighter pressure.
Running a no dump set. Resetting to cuts coming out of the stack. Hodgson puts ones in the ground. French opt not to fast break. Missed opportunity for the Australians.
Really missed opportunity. And we spoke to this before. I think they really view themselves and their sort of team makeup as more of a defensive team. So they are willing to take some shots here and there on the defense, but that's just a miscue. That's just a turf.
Oh, the left-handed Loliev catches the marker unprepared and finds Fratia for the goal.
For an around backhand? For an
around forehand. It's just one of those cases where the first time you ever mark up on a lefty, you're just not.
You're not ready.
You're not ready, and
that flick especially is just devastating.
Loliev makes him pay, and again we're looking at another weak side. That's starting to become a theme of the tournament, the weak side huck.
Yeah.
But he finds a really wide open Fratia for the goal.
I'm not totally sure after that miscue by Hodgson that Australia really ever got back on D the way they were off the pole.
It didn't feel like they were.
It didn't feel. I mean, it felt like they were chasing the French around for the rest of the point.
So we are at France pulling down 4-5, opportunity to get their break back from earlier in the game. Gave up break on their first offensive point. Floaty backhand pulls just going to come short of the goal line. Shepard, Gardner, side stack from the Australians, finds Holmes in the middle of the field.
We are seeing man-to-man defense here by the French, but they're still really loose up front. And I'm not sure that's really getting them anything. They're kind of just...
It's a forced middle, which is an interesting change of pace for the French. Levis. Again, you see this no dump set from the Australians. Really interesting that we saw the women yesterday also playing a no dump set.
I think that may be a bit of technology that is a little more common in Australia, possibly.
I think if you can hit a 20-yard under consistently. And
absolutely. I like the attacking mindset.
Yep.
Absolutely, but when it gets in trouble, it's really in trouble.
Yeah. Well, we saw the Japanese women give the Australian women a ton of trouble.
Nice bid by Dowell.
Dowell's able to kind of get there on a little bit of an overthrow by Levis. Levis again. Blakely. Gardner. Holmes. Looks hammer to Mike Dowell for the goal.
And again, I think that's a bit of veteran field sense there by John Holmes.
he looked off the strong side.
He did. He
had
looked
Levis
off.
on the strong
he
side.
looked off the strong side. I think he felt like it was a little too tight, maybe.
Yeah.
And was able to just really.
So you see, Levis is going to get it. He's going to get it here. He's
got
Levis wide open going down. He chooses to go weak side to down.
But there's a lot of. I mean, that's a real soft spot.
Yeah.
Just like we've seen with those kind of far side, soft side hucks.
Yeah.
I think that hammers are really, when you're only 25 yards out, a really excellent opportunity again to hit that soft side, especially with as experienced a thrower as John Holmes is.
Yeah.
He's seen a lot of international competition. He's not going to hesitate on that.
And I liked that the Australians were able to maintain possession. I mean, they threw maybe 10 or 12 passes on that point. And in getting the French D to go back and forth, that's what opens up a lot of those weak side looks. Hurel, Lorino, Zubir. Looks like a trapping 1-3-3 from the Australians.
They're really rotating that mark all the way around to stop the dump.
And it
almost becomes a four-man.
Some inside crashing is going to open up the big throw across the field. Plus,
that's where you get hurt in that.
Yep.
If you could throw that hammer
Hurel.
or break through the cup.
Hurel scans the field. Back to Hurel.
Don't think he's in.
Right on the goal line, double team. Calls double team. Plus.
Hammer to the far corner.
Not to throw it. A bit of trouble.
Great
Finds
break.
a sprawling Zubir for the goal. Nice job by the French. I thought they could have done a little bit more.
After they got the break, or
no, just a little bit more inside. That when we've seen this zone from the Australians before, I felt like it's been vulnerable to that little inside 2-yard pass.
Because they're a little bit more spread out than.
And then once they collapse, that opens up that big hammer.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And I think credit the French though, really poised with the disc.
Yeah.
Even
in a pretty bad situation, even at the very end of the point.
Absolutely, and I think they ended up having to kind of sneak one through the cup.
Yep.
But not a super technically difficult throw, certainly. Yep. And they looked at that hammer over the top and chose not to throw it, and I kind of like that decision. They're not in a terrible spot. They see that there are some soft spots through the cup, and actually the hammer I think probably would have been a fine choice, but there's an easier decision there.
Yeah, no,
if it floats, you're in trouble with Australia.
Yeah, Middleton was just lurking back there. He was waiting for it. 6-5 Australia. Gardner. Dowell. Gardner. Keenan. Pick's gonna send it back to Gardner. Kind of some sort of a spread formation, not a particularly disciplined formation here from the Australians. Dowell. Levis. Keenan. Gardner. Levis. It's going to be a forced middle from the French. Blakely looks to Tatum. Nice grab by Tatum. 7-5.
And I love the decision, and actually the French did well with that forced middle.
I like the forced middle.
I like the forced middle a lot in that situation, and it really, it forced the Australians to throw more throws, certainly, and they actually got something that looked like pretty reasonable. Certainly, Australia had to make a great grab in order to reel that one in. But the French really forcing the Australian offense to throw more throws
than
they probably want to, and for less gain.
Yeah.
I think that's really where Australia could falter, is they're used to big risk, big reward.
Right.
And France really making them throw lower risk passes, but a lot of them for little reward. And I think that's where you get Australia, you catch them getting a little bit antsy.
Right.
And they're going to rush it and throw something, similar to how a potential zone mentality would work.
Right.
You're hoping the offense gets a little
I think
antsy.
you do hope in a forced middle that eventually you're able to generate some really good pressure on a reset. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen that from the French. The French seem content to let them throw a 5-yard dump.
And Australia's a no reset offense.
Yeah.
And so they are getting away with so far being able to throw that inside out if they need to, or throw the big swing out wide as the reset.
Yeah.
But the French haven't been able to lock down on that reset pressure yet because there's no reset.
And we see a long pass from Lorino to Fratia. Well defended. I thought Fratia held position. He just didn't make the play at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, Fratia didn't go up quite strong enough, unfortunately. And now the Australians have an opportunity to rack up another break.
To get another break. Shepard
UCO and Shepard.
Nice around to start the play.
I think especially for this Australian D team, when Shepard gets that break off coming our direction, you'd love to see that receiver be able to just turn and line up a huck immediately. I think a missed opportunity there for this Australian defensive.
Shepard
right
did a
here.
Nice job.
You'd love to see Andrew Jackson just be able to rack up that flick huck.
But Shepard playing a really traditional reset position here. Goes up line, well into space. French defender's going to poach. And the throw from Andrew Jackson is out of bounds anyway. Captain Plas to pick it up for the French. Looks off the reset. He's going to throw a big swing across the field. Lots of chance. Taylor putting just enough pressure on it to force the turnover. This is our first multiple turnover point. 2 turnovers from the French so far. Big inside-out swing to Shepard across the field. Catches it just short of the sideline.
And the French
Jackson.
defenders are just way behind.
And chip. Pillar to Evans for the goal.
And another break for Australia. I think, it's a little frustrating there if you're a France fan to see Australia be able to just run 1-2. They're really, on that sequence going towards the goal. They just just outran them.
It's the first point I think we've seen from the French where they looked really
winded a little bit.
And just generally shaky. They looked great so far. They've looked fantastic this game so far. And there we saw 2 unforced error turnovers and then an easy goal for the Australians. And that leaves us 8-5. And I think the French have taken a timeout to kind of get themselves collected. And so we'll take a short break. Welcome back to the 2012 WIFDIF World Ultimate Guts Championships. We're late in the first half of Australia versus France. Australia's up 8-5, pulling to the French. It's been a really clean game so far. We've only seen 6 total turnovers thus far, 3 of them in the last point.
Yeah, and I think in particular, we saw France calling that timeout, and I think during that timeout they really wanted to discuss potentially the transition after a turn. I think on that last sequence, they really let the Australian defensive team, just run away with it on offense. And I think if you're France, you might in this game really desire super clean offense, but it's just not always going to happen against a team like Australia.
No. Australia's going to be able to generate some turnovers.
Australia's going to generate some turnovers, and I think the team that can win that sort of transition battle between going O to D and being able to switch quick enough is a team that's going to get those easy kinds of goals that Australia just got.
Okay, Australia with the pull. Lovely pull from the Aussies.
And great coverage.
Little hesitation. Plas. Looks like the French are running a bit of a dominator. Hurel. Plas running the field a little deep.
It's a very spread out dominator. Lots of room, but it forces pretty long
It gets
throws.
exactly what you want from the dominator.
Great grab.
Great grab. Loliev going up big on the huck from Zubir.
And
textbook dominator offense from the French.
And just caught Tad Hill sleeping a little bit. And wow, I mean, great. And not only that, but really well executed throw.
Yeah, I mean, you get
there's very little room for error there with a much, much taller, I'm sorry, that's Isherwood.
Yeah.
Much, much taller
Australian
defensive player.
yeah.
And, a really great job by the French to go up and get that one, but a well-executed hook.
If we back up a pass, though, it's the dominator that sets that up, and it's the run, and you see the shorter, quicker Zubir getting away from his defender. He's got 6 steps of separation as he comes across the middle of the field.
You know, what's interesting about this French dominator, though, it's throwing very long passes.
Yeah, but look how far back that stack is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're given a lot of room, and I think it means that the Australian defenders that are in the stack, we see a nice break here.
Yep.
You see the Australian defenders that are in the stack ball watching a little bit.
Yes.
And they got caught a little bit with their pants down, and a great strike.
Gardner. Immediate huck to Blakely. Perfectly placed. Not much there for Blakely. Foul
Again,
called.
really clean offense here by both teams.
Bar. Keenan should be up for the goal, and he is. Another perfectly executed Australian point.
It almost looked like on that away pass into the end zone that Gervais might have had an opportunity.
Had he been looking.
Had he been looking to go get that disc.
He should have been looking.
He made up ground.
Yeah.
And, it would have been a shot in the dark for him to lay out and get that disc. But one more step, and he's contesting it.
I mean, part of his job there as a defender is that he's got to sort of keep an eye on that corner once he's in that spot.
Well, yeah, and he's got to know he's in the hot spot.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the option right there, unless somehow you get a hammer over the top to somebody who's not paying attention on the far side.
Yeah.
That live side option for the guy who just went up line, that's it. You're in the hot seat. You got to perform.
So an incredibly clean game. We see that Australia is up 2 breaks. 9-6. They'll be pulling after half. They've only turned it over twice the whole game. French, though, hanging around. They've
Playing
only
very clean offense.
Very clean offense from the French. They've only turned it over 4 times.
I think if you're in this French huddle going into halftime, one of the things that they can improve upon is their defense.
That would be the conversation.
In
I think
particular,
for
their
both
mark
teams,
and their dump defense. You really try and sort of scare the Australians into making a couple quick moves that they don't want to make.
Yep.
Snake a few turnovers.
So it is halftime, 9-6 Australia over France. We'll be taking a break. You know, if you're in the States, it's probably beer and chips time. If you're in Australia, welcome to the second half of Next Gen's coverage of the Australia versus France game here at the WIFDIF World Ultimate Guts Championships. It's 9-6 Australia. Talking with the Australian players at halftime, very relaxed.
Yeah, they're definitely, I think, pleased with this performance, and I think especially, and we heard this from them, given that it's the first game of the tournament, their offense has been very clean.
Right. We talked to the O guys, and they just were all relaxed and smiles.
Right.
The D guys.
The D guys maybe, are feeling like they're getting their legs under them, but I don't think they should be happy with their performance. So
no, I don't think they were either. They're taking it on the chin a little. They only forced 4 turnovers.
Yeah, and they made good with a lot of those.
They did. They banked 2 of them.
They banked 2 of them, and that's always important. But you'd like to see this team, especially the Australian team, come out and force a couple more Ds. A few of those turns were kind of on, they made good on them, but they were like a little bit of a French miscue.
Yeah.
A little bit less forcing the issue.
Right. Okay. And the French, we talked to Coach Manu Schmutz at halftime, and he said,
Determination.
Yes, determination is what they need on defense, and that they're going to mix it up. They're going to play a little middle. They're going to play a little force one way.
And I think he was pleased with the offense.
Yes. Both offenses very pleased with how they played that half.
But the French know they need to force some Ds.
Yeah.
They need to get breaks if they want to win this game, but they need to force those Ds.
They haven't got a single turn out of the Australian O squad.
No.
Okay, and the French receiving to start the second half. Plus, the Australians playing some sort of a junk. It looks like a FSU of some kind. Plus finds a little seam. PTA. Zubir. Nice transition by the Australians. Great bid. PTA. Pick called.
That was a really, and you said it, excellent transition by Australia. And it wasn't just a pure find your guy, go get it. They actually threw a few switches in there.
It's a really lovely switch up at the top. Yeah.
That was very heads-up play by those handler defenders. And again, the France offense
immediately just
really running through that give-go, quick handler movement.
Great point for SBTA. Really, 5 touches in there, throws
Absolutely.
the goal, finds Fratier.
And again, we see that short handler movement opening up the shot for France, similar to how they worked the Dominator in the first half.
Yeah.
That handler movement, generating quick passes, generating the open slot for the end zone.
Yeah, I think that's the 3rd goal for Fratier in this game, and the Australians are going to need to. And we talked about how they're really good at adjusting to matchups. They're going to need to.
They might need a matchup there.
They're going to need to get a good matchup for him because he's really hurting him in the end zone, and that's an area where you think that the Australians should win.
Yeah, should win. And we did speak to Max Wheeler though at the half. One of Australia's really shut down handler quick defenders, and he has the flu.
He has the flu. He's not feeling well. He's only got 1 block.
He's got 1 block. We saw more out of him in their North American tour, certainly. That might be a factor, moving forward. A, you really hope no one else gets the flu.
Yes.
But B, having one of your best shutdown defenders, quick guys, being out, that hurts you, especially against a team like France.
Isolation, can't find Holmes, but Blakely's free in the middle. Now Holmes gets it. Looks big to Dow. Defended by
Plassen,
Guillaume.
I don't think, yes, Guillaume,
no,
the D captain. I don't think he ever saw it.
Never really had a shot.
Much taller offensive player, much taller Australian.
Probably given up 8 or 9 inches.
Yeah, but I don't think he looked. I don't think he looked for the disc.
No,
I think he played the man the whole way, and you really,
Although in a way, when you're giving up that much size, you have to.
You just got to get your body in there and do what you can.
And but you'd like him defensively to be a little
more heads up.
Well, no, I was not going to say heads up, but more just tougher. Once he knows that disc is up in the air and that he's on stage with a big size mismatch, get a body on him, push him, just make.
Well, and I think what you can do in that situation, you see where the disc is early.
Yep.
You find the spot and you just
fight
anchor.
for it.
You anchor that spot.
Yeah.
You try and use your body to keep that much taller offensive player. Like if he's going to go get it, you make him go get it over the top. Yeah. And I think he didn't set himself up very well for that because he never saw the disc. He was playing the Australian player the entire time. I mean, tough situation. It came back over, around his shoulder. But really, if France is going to pull back into this, they're going to have to make some of those plays. Out of bounds pull.
Hero
will go to the brick.
Hero walking to the brick. Plus and Lorino going to spread out wide. We've got a split 2-and-2 spread formation from the French. I think we'll probably see.
Australia is really tight on it. They're not really poaching.
Plus.
Big swing.
Socrates. Lorino.
Really tight defense here by the Australians. France struggling to find much downfield, really having to throw a lot of swings.
It's going to go out. Poach off the back of the stack there for the Australians.
Nice D by Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson going up big and getting the D. That's a really nice piece of work by him. Coming off man. And it appears that Hurrell has called a foul on Hodgson.
Andrew Jackson did a great job here in both getting his body into the play, but also making a great effort to get a jump up over the French
who did a good job of holding the spot.
He held his ground. He saw the spot early, and he really went up strong.
But a bit of a discussion between Hurrell and Hodgson, but it is going to come back. There are no observers here at the WIFDIF tournament. So when there's a dispute, it really goes back to that original rules. It's just a do-over.
Right. And, the players work it out.
Socrates. Oh, great D by...
Is that Middleton?
Middleton.
It is Middleton.
Yep, coming.
And, he's one of those young players that can get hot like that, you'd like to see him continue to perform for the rest of the game, but great defensive effort.
And Jackson just gets a miscue with Max Wheeler. Tries to hold it, can't.
And France wisely slows it down a little bit. They had a few maybe open players running deep, but they were pretty deep. That was going to have to be a pinpoint throw.
The downfield D from the Australians is really picked up, and that, I think Ploss was open. He could have got that, and
thought it was someone else maybe.
Yeah, he's feeling the pressure. Second opportunity for the Australians this point. Wheeler. Taylor, Wheeler. Jackson. Middleton. The French offense looking tired. Hodgson.
Wow, Max Wheeler. And he did not look even close to a step slow on that one.
No.
Max Wheeler blowing up the line like it's his job. And just, the French defender
not there.
Basically gives up. Realizes how badly he's beat.
Yep.
On the money throw by Hodgson, but he
Lovely
really doesn't. He doesn't have to do a lot, but he gets it there nicely. Max Wheeler reels it in.
I think we've seen this now. This is the second time we've seen it from the French. They're working so hard on offense. Really, all 7 players making 20, 30-yard cuts, running full speed, that when they turn it over, the legs aren't there for D.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really may be more of a, you'd like to be maybe really hard edge about that and say fitness, but it really might be a strategy point, Their offense is predicated on just running really hard and a lot.
Yep.
And so that quick, very anaerobic movement that they're doing means that they can't, turn around and be aerobic on the other end.
Yep.
It's difficult, especially with the stylistic differences between the two offenses. Australia is a little bit more weight, but kind of a long running team.
Yeah.
Both on their big long swings as well as on hucks, and the French are really, they're much more quick twitch.
Fratier finds Espitia. Curel. Nice hammer. Dropped by Loliev. Little casual on the catch.
Yeah, went one-handed. It was kind of on the far side of his body, but an unfortunate drop.
Hodgson.
Makes it nice and easy.
12-7.
Timeout, France.
Manu Schmutz, coach for France, wisely calling a timeout here. This game is starting to look like it's getting out of hand. And get out of hand for the French.
Yeah, I think Australia really, this is the sort of strategy point that is really playing into their hands. Their defense has played really locked down downfield.
Great coming out of half.
Great coming out of the half. And, what they're able to do is, just like we're saying, the French are working so hard on offense that opens up when the Australian D team is on offense. It opens up the whole field for them. They can run in a straight line. They can sort of execute their strategy, and they're really able to get pretty wide open goals.
Okay. So both teams are taking a break here during this timeout, and so will we. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, we're back in the second half of Australia versus France. Australia starting to pull away, up 12-7, behind some really tenacious downfield defense. I think that coaches must have got on them at halftime, giving them a little bit of hard time, challenged them to step up, and we've really seen it. And I think the French offensively have continued to work hard and are still open, but the Australians are generating enough pressure that this inexperienced French team is not
they can't quite get to that next level. I agree with you. And I think we saw it a couple of times where
long overthrow to Ploss.
A long overthrow to Ploss, a couple of, swings that are just a little tighter than they're used to, and it's not even necessarily that first, the swing is completed.
Yeah.
But it's like oh my God, that guy was close, and you get that little adrenaline bump
Yep.
that you're just not used to playing in that situation with such tight D, and then your next throw is bad.
Yeah. Starting line out there for France. Kurel de Place. Out into space to Lorineau. I think that was a bit of a miscue, and Espitier is able to come in, pick it up, back to Place. Does look like they're trying to work that Dominator, really, really physical D by Isherwood on Lorineau.
And Lorineau choosing, and there he calls a foul.
Smart foul call.
Yeah, that was the right decision.
Boy,
Actually,
Isherwood really bringing the lumber.
wow, right? I mean, I think much bigger, potentially a little bit slower defender
Yes.
than the speedy Frenchman, but wow, that's a lot of physicality out of Australia.
Key matchup here between Wheeler and Place. Big inside out across the field trying to find Terrell. And Joel Pilar is able to come up and get the D. Backhand trap by the French. Wheeler. Denyer. Pilar flips. Isherwood.
Nice and easy.
13-7. No trouble for the
You know,
Australians there.
good footwork there by Joel Pilar to really, get his mark on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Like he's going to throw that flick.
Forehand around.
And then step right through and throw a really, really nice, easy backhand. That's kind of inside out.
Here's the setup.
Gets him on the backside and just
No pressure there. Here's the pillar backhand. Yeah, nice
so nonchalant.
Yep.
But did, great on the footwork to lean his defender the other way. Gets a nice, easy backhand.
French now really on the back heel.
Yeah.
They're still cranking and putting out the energy on running and cutting on offense.
I think they just haven't responded well to the increased Australian pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, Australia came out of that half like they knew it was their job
To bring the pressure.
to bring it up.
Yeah.
And France has not responded well.
No.
And I think that again goes back to just
The experience.
International experience.
Yep.
I think the European teams oftentimes become accustomed to playing against each other and each other's tendencies. And this might be, a bit more physicality than they've seen before in international
and knowing how to
competition.
deal and get away from that physicality and use the athleticism you have. And we're seeing in the stack really intense physical defense from the Australians, bumping, elbow in the back.
And it's often, again, it's not like that physicality or tight defense is exactly directly hurting the French. I mean, the offense, I think, is still getting a lot of what it wants. It's just generating those kinds of miscues right there, where the France, offensive player stops a little short because he feels the pressure instead of running through.
Strange little moment here where there's some sort of a call. Looked like it was going to be a turnover. Scala somehow manages to pick up the garbage, and after some discussion, I think he's gonna keep the disc.
Maybe Hodgson is signaling like
Let you go back.
he'd like to see it go back.
And it is. It's going to come back to Spitier.
Foul before the throw. And
Yeah,
France, go ahead.
dealing with that physicality, I think that the French, they are smaller. Every one of them is giving up 10, 20 pounds. You can't.
And a few inches.
And a few inches. You cannot. You can't let the defender get a hold of you, like physically get a hold of you. You have to use your quickness and kind of slipperiness to make sure you're always maintaining separation. And that's the kind of international experience that the French are lacking. European teams just not playing that physical.
Yeah.
Tavo. Scala. Big inside out. Lovely throw from Scala. Benjamin. Mark finally gets there. Sokrat. Benganem. Tavo. Hammer from Tavo across the field.
Really nice throw.
Yeah. Finds Sokrat. They did a great job of holding up to the pressure there.
They did. They really did. And I think it was just like you were saying, what helps is if they use their speed and quickness to really keep that Australian defender from catching up to them ever. Even when they're resetting the stack, even when they're clearing space for somebody else.
Constant motion.
If they keep moving, that Australian defender won't get close enough to be able to put the physicality on them.
Yeah.
And I think in that instance, that's what we saw is those that were moving, constantly were able to keep that offense going easily.
Yes. And interesting, we hadn't really seen Tavo in yet. That was, I think, maybe his first point, and he comes in, really captains that offense there and gets 2 or 3 crucial resets, throws the goal.
Right. And if you're the French here, the defense here just has to step up a level.
Yes.
I mean, they need this break badly to stay hanging around in this game. And if not a break, at the very least, make Australia work.
Yep.
Set yourself up to go on a little bit of a run here in the next 2-3 points, and hope that your offense.
Wow,
just
Gardner getting around to
it.
Shepard. If he's in, they're going to say that he is in. I thought he was out, actually. Okay, it's Blakely, actually, not Shepard. Levis looks off Tatum.
Cheeky high
Cheeky
relief
little high
flick.
forehand. Keenan goes around. Pick.
Travel called.
Travel called.
Great bid bear by Michote, the Frenchman.
On Gardner.
On Gardner, just a little.
It wouldn't have mattered.
Break side, but
goes back anyway.
Goes back anyway. Some discussion here about whether the travel was a travel.
Would you call that a circle stack, Chase, from the Australians?
That's an interesting formation there. I think they're just all lining up here to try and get that break side cut.
Levis, just a little dishy, finds Tatum coming out of the stack. Classic.
Just textbook
poor man's
dish.
break.
Yeah, the poor man's break, absolutely. And you saw the Australian stack not really lining up super cleanly, like they knew exactly what was going to happen and who was going to do it.
I think that's just characteristic of this Australian team, is that they're not
incredibly disciplined about stack maintenance.
Yeah, and clarity and cleanness of line is not necessarily essential to be a good on offense.
And what it takes instead of that is chemistry.
Yes.
Everybody knows what the other person is going to do, and I think that maybe on the North American tour was something that we saw lacking a little bit.
Right.
And I think, of course, would come from a team just sort of getting used to each other. And it's clear here today that they're improving upon it, and I think every time we've seen them play, they've been improving upon that chemistry.
Okay. All right. So it looks like the Australians have taken a timeout. A couple things maybe they want to talk about. We'll take a short break. To Next Gen's coverage of the 2012 WIFDIF World Ultimate and Guts Championships. We are late in the second half of Australia versus France. Australia's really starting to pull away from what was a close game at half. They're up 14-8.
Lou, what does this mean for these teams moving forward? We've got a long tournament here.
Yep. And this is this pool, unlike the other pools, only has 4 teams in the pool. Sweden is the 1 seed in the pool. Australia is the 2 seed in the pool. And then France and the Netherlands are the 3 and the 4. 3 of these teams are going to go on to the power pools. And so for the French, their big game is going to be later this week against the Netherlands, who they've already played 3 times this year. They're 2-1 against. And I think watching the French play today, if they can play like they did in the first half of this game, they got to feel good about their chances in that game.
Definitely. Especially, super clean on offense in the first half was just really lovely. I think they've succumbed a little bit in the second to the Australian pressure.
Yeah. They really need to win that game against the Netherlands because historically they've never beaten the Swedes. And the Swedes have played really well this year. They played great early this spring, winning some big games on the European circuits. And I don't think it's a game that the French can
afford to lose.
Well, no, it's not a game that the French can count on needing to win.
Yeah. There's a tough miscommunication turnover on a hammer that kind of dropped in the middle of
Just
three
in
French
traffic,
players.
yeah.
You know, certainly they were open. You know, it's a tough throw, but
Yeah.
you'd like somebody to make an effort at it, certainly. And again, you know, pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure from the Australians, and the French don't rise to the challenge quite as well.
As you'd like to see. For the Australians, I got the sense when we talked to them that they weren't crystal clear about what their goals were for the tournament. You know, that as they talked about it, they're like, yeah, we want to win, but I'm not sure that they
put together how that would happen necessarily. Who's their roadblock? And how they're going to take it a step at a time to really get there. Certainly, beating a tops, you know, power pools is big.
Yep.
Beating the top seed in this pool would really set a great tone for them.
Yeah.
I think, especially, you know, Sweden historically one of the strongest European teams.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Long and sort of illustrious Swedish history of victories at this tournament. And they bring back a lot of returners and some strong players from their 2008 campaign.
But boy, if the Australians play like they did today,
that's going to be a great
they're going to win that game. I mean, they have yet to turn it over from their own squad. Only 3 total turnovers for the game.
And, you know, here we go again. The D squad's offense, especially when they're just kind of running and gunning, is really nice. Close to flawless.
Shepard really nice forehand around. He's going to go up the line. No problem. No problem from Hill. Hill to Shepard, 16-8.
And we're at game point, Australia. You know, one of those things, again, sort of, we harped a little bit at halftime on the Australian defense really rising to the challenge here, and they have. And setting the tone for the rest of the tournament here would be winning on a break.
Yes. They've only given up 2 goals to the French the whole second half. Otherwise, they've outscored them. The D's gotten 5 breaks this half, and that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And France, you know, they're crossing their arms and hanging their heads here a little bit.
Yeah.
It's got to be in a tough situation to be down 16-8, game point. But if you're the French coach here, you know, what are you telling your players to try and set the tone moving forward? Are you just trying to get out of this one? Are you trying to learn lessons? It's tough.
It's a really tough spot to be in. And I think we see, interestingly, Tavo is in again. You know, we didn't see him until really late in the second half. So it's interesting that he is in. And some guys who had seen a lot of minutes early on, like Zubir's not in, Sokrat is not in.
They may just be bleeding this one out. Although
Gurel and Ploss are both in.
Yeah, the D captain Gurel is in. And a great D by Middleton.
Huge block by Middleton. Two nice blocks by Middleton today.
Absolutely.
Nice job by the young guy. Hodgson around to Evans. Mark switches. Andrew Jackson just scoops it out. Wheeler back to Jackson.
Great bid there by Liliev.
Stoppage. Fratier marking Isherwood. Fatigue showing a lot of hands on knees. Evans.
You know, one thing here that the from a dead disc, the Australian
big floater.
Great D.
Oh, Middleton tries the greatest. Oh! If the footwork stands, that is an incredible play. Middleton's footwork was wonderful. Coming back to Isherwood, I'm not sure that Isherwood was good with his feet, and it looks
French
like
defender is down.
Scala is down.
Possibly from exasperation. That was just a really heads-up play by Middleton.
Really great play by Middleton.
Came away with a big D in that point. But you know, both Aussies actually really heads-up play. Middleton to have the presence of mind to throw the greatest,
and then Isherwood to.
To toe it in. Grab it low and toe it
You
in.
think he was in?
I don't see anybody contesting it.
I think they're still really worried. Nope, they're shaking hands, and that game is going to end on incredible play.
Wow. Could have.
Wheeler throwing the turnover. Middleton, do we credit Middleton with a pair of Ds there?
Yeah.
I guess
I
don't know
so.
how we do that. Anyway, so we're going to give the assist.
The box score is confused.
It's confused, but it is going to end with the greatest from Middleton to Isherwood. Both guys making really great heads-up athletic plays to end, and that's going to do it here for us, folks. We are coming back much later today for just a cracker of a game. Team USA, Team Canada.
Women.
Top 2 seeds from the women's division. Should just be absolutely fantastic. Okay. So on behalf of everybody here at Next Gen Ultimate,